Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, and we've got a good episode for you today because I love to travel, as I know producer Carrie does, and our guest is perfect for that topic today. We're going to be talking to Caroline Knowles, and she is the owner and travel agent at Magical Distractions Travel Company. So, Caroline, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, let me ask you this. You went from paralegal for, 15, 16 years, something like that, to
yes.
the owner of your own travel company. So, take us through that journey and kind of what led from legal work to owning a travel company.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting story, actually. I did do litigation paralegal work for some local firms here for about 16 years, and it was great. Then we had the BP oil spill, and let's talk about stress.
Right.
I worked for a small firm here in downtown, and I was the one in charge of the intake for all of the claims, for processing everything, for making sure everything was done. 2010, I was working about 60 plus hours a week, two small kids, never home. The stress was unbelievable. And literally at that point in time in my life, I was working to pay for my Disney vacations. And that was something that as a child fell in love with and carried it on to my children. So the stress was so bad. My husband basically sat me down and was like, look, you were busting your tail. You were never home. And all we're doing is throwing money at the mouse. And
Right.
He was fine to go several times, but after year after year after year, it got redundant. And he said, you know what, you find a way to make the mouse pay you, and then we'll be good. And so it was sort of a, here, hold my beer moment. I'm going to get right on that. So that was sort of how it started. That was the door he opened to say that. Well, you said I could, so here we go.
Okay.
From that, I started doing some blogging, and then was asked from an agency actually based out of New Hampshire if I wanted to do some travel agency work. And I thought, okay, let's try this. And then it went from there. It took about 4 years to build up to the point where I had enough clients that I could go out on my own. Mm-hmm. And in May of 2018, I opened Magical Distractions Travel, became my own owner, and now we have 21 agents nationally who work under me.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So before in this podcast, we talked a lot about monetizing your passion. It's great to have passion for something, but if you want to turn it into something besides a hobby, I mean, you got to be able to monetize it, which it sounds like you
Right.
did. So talk about the blog, though. Were you just blogging at the time about specifically Disney,
It was
or was it just
specifically
all
about Disney. I was always the one that friends, if they were planning a trip, would call and say, hey, where do you stay? What do you do? So I was already sort of doing that planning stuff without the benefit of getting paid. Mm-hmm. And so with the blog, it was kind of like, oh, here's an information sheet. Let's talk about all the latest news with Disney. It's very hard to make money in blogging unless you are a big-time influencer. And I learned very quickly I was not.
Okay.
I have a defunct blog, but it was from that I actually made the connections to move on to go into the travel agency ownership industry. So Disney is the main one that I personally sell. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of Orlando, Disney, and Universal, but we do everything worldwide. I've got a lot of agents that are big in river cruises in Europe and different packages, all-inclusives. It's not just Disney, but that's where it started.
I gotcha.
So the suppliers will pay us a commission based on the package that we sell. Mm-hmm. So we don't charge planning fees to clients. The price that you pay with us is the price you would pay direct.
Right. Okay. Well, now, so let's talk specifically about Disney, and then we'll branch out from there. But
Sure.
Just from your perspective, I mean, I know people, I have a cousin that is kind of like you. They'll go 2 or 3 times a year.
Right.
One of our tax managers goes at least once or twice a year. So from your perspective, just I'm curious, what is the draw about Disney? I don't know. It's kind of like perfect. I mean, you never really see the behind the scenes things that make it happen, but it
Right.
just is. It's just like this utopia down there that people love to go back to over and over again. So what do you think that's about?
You either love it or you hate it. And I've learned that when working with people, they'll call and say, I do not want to go to Disney, but I have to do it because of my kids. No, you did it the wrong way the first time. So there's a right way and a wrong way. For me personally, it was life is stressful. and you work and you work and you save your money, and vacation is supposed to be relaxing. And back in the day when my children were younger, we could go to Disney, and it was the one place where everybody had something that they were happy. Nobody was bored. Nobody was, I'm miserable. It's that, there was always something to entertain. Even my husband back then, before he went 10, 15 times. But it really is. It's a magical world. Walt Disney created the perfect place for me. You walk in, I still will cry when I walk into the Magic Kingdom and see the castle. I don't know if it's just that inner childhood coming back out. Yeah. It's like as an adult, you have to keep everything in and be professional. But then there, it's like you can be a kid again. Yeah. So that's it for me, just to see it through children's eyes. And now it's just, having to go a solid year during the pandemic without going, that was tough. Mm-hmm. That was tough. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's still a thing. So we'll talk about that specifically and how it affected your business because obviously, travel-dependent companies, took its toll. Yeah, yeah. Before that, though, let me ask you this. Have you always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit about you? You went from a steady paying paycheck, not 8 to 5 necessarily, but it was a job.
Normally it was, yes.
Normally, yeah. And,
right.
and so the paycheck hit your bank account every, 2 weeks or twice a month or whatever it was. To being your own boss, is that something that you had always thought about doing? Have you always had that pull?
Never. God just sort of opened all these doors at one time, and it just fell into my lap. And no, I never intended for that. It is stressful at times when you're 100% commission based, especially when people cancel and you get paid only when they travel. Mm-hmm. So yes, I always dreamed of having this dream job where you were always happy, but actually owning my own business, no, that just sort of happened. And I'm very thankful that it did.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the benefits then of hiring a travel agent because, let's face it, in this day and time, with everyone having access to Expedia and, I don't know, just direct booking sites as far as airlines and hotels and things like that, it's an option for somebody to go on and book their own travel. Right. So why do I need to come to a travel agent instead of doing that on my own?
A lot of people found out last year during the pandemic when travel was shut down and everything was canceled and nobody was going to work. For instance, Costco is a very big competitor with travel agents because they have their own travel agency. They have people who are in there who will, give you information and sell it. And we can't compete with their prices. I don't know how they do it, to be honest, but they are able to sell at a lower price point. The problem is you don't have the customer service. And a lot of people, when it was panic time, trips are being canceled. People have already paid $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a trip. How are they going to get the money back? They're calling and they're not able to get through to a person. I think the value of using a personal agent really came through during this, which is good for us. But when you use a travel agent, let's say for Disney in particular or Universal, when you book with an agent, you have that personal connection. They are your liaison with the supplier. So someone comes to me, books, we pay the deposit, everything's done. Part of what we do is we watch out for travel discounts. A lot of times the suppliers, of course, Disney and Universal are huge with this. They will offer promotions. We get advance notice when those are coming. Usually it's about a day in advance, but we're ready at 5 a.m. on the computer when they go live to get those for our clients. Mm-hmm. If you didn't use an agent, you're going to have to call in. And you're going to get in a queue of 5-6 hours and hold, and you're going to talk to a different person every time you contact the supplier. Mm-hmm. You don't have that one direct person. That's a big part of it. But then also with Disney, with dining reservations, with fast passes, with planning where you're going to the parks, what you're going to do, where you're going to stay. Personally, I'm there all the time. I'm there 3 or 4 times a year, so I have a lot of information and knowledge on all of those things so that I can pass them on to the client. Mm-hmm. And then, too, during travel, if there's an emergency, there's been a lot of times where we've had people who have gotten sick while they were in the middle of travel or had an injury. They can come to us and we communicate with the supplier. We get them with their insurance company, and it's just sort of a peace of mind.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if you book through Booking.com or some of these other online companies, you're going to get the same price you get with us.
I got you. Well, and you pointed out in your show primer that there's a level of expertise, too, that comes with using an agent because just like accounting and consulting is my field, travel is your field. And so when you've done it a lot, and not just you with Disney, but I'm sure you made a point that river cruises or cruises, for instance.
Right.
You're not a big cruiser, but
No,
you have people
personally, I
that
am not.
work with you that are
Right.
big cruisers. And
Exactly.
so there's a level of expertise and knowledge that comes along with hiring someone who deals with that field day in and day out that I think is helpful.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the reason why I've been able to be so successful with this is because I know what I'm good at. I know that my focus is Disney parks, Universal parks, and then the Disney brand, across the board, Disney Cruise Line, Alani, and Adventures by Disney. Those are things that I know very, very well. Someone comes to me and says, hey, we want to go to Europe and we want to take a river cruise in the Rhine. I'm not your person. Right. I have people in the agency that can help you. But if I haven't personally experienced it and I don't deal with it on a daily basis, I'm not the expert you need.
Right. All right. So speaking of others having expertise that you may not have, talk about your team. How did you find your agents that have become a part of your team? And then maybe what are you looking for in someone who you want to come along beside you and be a part of your company?
When I originally opened the agency in May of 2018, I left a host agency that I had been with. And there were 2 agents who were already established who said, hey, can we go with you? Okay. So, of course, no problem. So they came with me, and the 3 of us pretty much started out that first year. Mm-hmm. And then going forward, this was 2019, we were able to do some very specific marketing ads on Facebook that would be targeted to people who had an interest in Disney destinations, Universal, things like that. And I got a lot of feedback from that. And the majority of the people that have come to me are, hey, I've never been a travel agent before, but I really want to learn this and do this. So really, there's just myself and one other who was with me from the first agency that do this full time. Everybody else, this is sort of a side thing for them. Mm-hmm. But it started that way, and I got some great people. And then they would have friends who would, hey, that sounds interesting, and then contact me. And then actually I have 3 agents right now who were clients. Okay. Who then said, hey, this is something I'm very interested in, and have since become agents for the business. What am I looking for? I know that most people are not going to be able to do this full-time right off the bat, because like I said, it takes a while to build up your client base. You have to be a people person. Yeah. You have to have the ability to talk to a complete stranger about your passion to really be able to get that spark and get successful. And anybody who has the interest, who has the knowledge of the destinations. Mm-hmm. We have a link on the website that says, join our team. And there's a questionnaire you have to fill out. And there's specific questions about the main Orlando destinations that if you're not familiar with those places, you're not going to know the answers. So it sort of gives me an idea of, do I want to interview this person or do we not? Right.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, so let's talk about COVID then, and luckily, right now we're out of the shutdowns and the mandatory no travel, restrictions and that kind of thing. But going back 8-9 months, what was that like working through that when the industry that you rely upon for your livelihood was totally shut down? How do you navigate that? What did that look like in your own experience?
It was devastating, but I can say being a home-based agent made the world of difference for me. My office is at home. I have, like I said, 21 independent agents in different locations in the country. They are all 1099 contract employees, so it wasn't like I was still having to cover payroll. Mm-hmm. My expenses were my home expenses. Yeah. A lot of your brick and mortar travel agencies ended up having to close their doors. They didn't fare quite as fortunate as we did, but it was devastating. A lot of people didn't realize that we were spending hours and hours and hours on the phone with suppliers, canceling left and right, trying to get money back. All of this doing the work for free. Yeah. Because we don't get paid until after you travel. So with COVID, it was literally months of, when I say sitting on hold for 6-7 hours a day, that's not an exaggeration. That's literally what we were doing. And if you had flights bundled with packages, I had one agent who had clients that were actually in Paris when the travel ban came in and the president said, you've got 24 hours and we're closing the borders. So we had to scramble to get these people home. It was not fun. We went months with nothing.
So we're back now. People are traveling, and of course there are, issues with labor shortages and whatnot. So there's still some little hiccups here and there. But as far as your view of kind of the way travel maybe has changed going forward because of this, or what you think the long-term effects on the travel industry are going to be, do you have any idea kind of what we're looking at as we go forward, even coming out of the pandemic and once these different variants and that kind of thing are under control as well? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
I will say the month of June was record-breaking for my company. We did over $200,000 in travel sales during the month of June. People had money in their pockets. People were ready to go after being locked at home for a year. Everybody was ready to get out and go. And I think, like I said, the negative impact of booking through a discount supplier during pandemic really shined a light on the value of using a travel agent, and more people were contacting us that otherwise would not have. So this summer has been huge. We've been slammed booking people left and right. We're literally crossing our fingers and hoping that those all hold and stay on course. But, there's so much unknown. It totally depends on where you're going and your destination. I'm personally not comfortable booking international travel right now, just because of the change fees with the flights, and that's pretty scary. But as far as my focus in Orlando, which is, I would say, 90% of what I do, I really think that things are going to be okay. Yeah. I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are visiting national parks and staying within the country. And I really don't know, but given what we have seen this summer before the Delta variant became so prominent everywhere, things were picking up better than they've ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read somewhere an article or something talking about the fact that people are traveling and are ready to travel, but a lot of times they're sticking a little bit closer to home. So it may be more car trips, or maybe they'll get on a plane, but they're not going to Europe or to Ireland or Spain. They're staying within the United States, which I would think would maybe help your,
Right. There's a lot of suppliers that are opening, and countries that are opening their doors. Like we have some clients that are going on an Adventures by Disney trip next week to Iceland. If you have your vaccination card, there are certain countries that have opened their doors, and you are welcome. But yes, we've seen a lot of people just wanting to stay a little closer to home. And of course, too, if you don't have a passport, the passport processing time is ridiculous right now. So, yeah, I mean, months.
So one of the tips is if you're thinking about going overseas, you need to start planning now if you don't have a passport.
Right. Yeah. If you want to go anywhere internationally within the next 6 to 12 months, you better go on and start applying for your passports because they were closed for so long and they're backed up and it's gotten bad. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you've have been very successful in turning your passion into a career. So what would you say to someone else who thinks, okay, I like to travel, I have an expertise in a certain area or, geographic place or whatever. What advice do you have for somebody who might want to be like you and get into this industry in particular?
If it's a destination that you're passionate about, that you have a lot of knowledge and experience with, go for it. You're not going to get rich quick. It takes a while to build up your client base. I would say, it took me about 4 years to get enough clients to where I was comfortable going out on my own. Now, you don't have to be an agency owner to be an agent. Right. You can sign on contract with people like I have my agents. But over time, if you are professional and responsible, you build that client base and they're going to keep referring people to you. I would say 95% of my clients have come from personal referrals from previous clients. Okay. We really don't advertise because we don't have to. It's all word of mouth. Right. And I'm very fortunate for that. Patience is one thing that's absolutely required to do this job. Patience with clients. Yeah. Clients can be difficult. Patience with sitting on the phone. A lot of people don't realize the hold times that are included with this job. Yeah. Most of my day is spent sitting on hold, listening to the classical music in the background, holding, waiting for someone to pick up. And if you don't have that patience and you don't have that time to devote to it, you probably will not be very successful. Yeah. But if you do, and you go in knowing that it's going to take time to build up, it's a great job. Plus, we get to travel a lot, know, and there are discounts if you meet certain sales that you can get. And it's by no means a glamorous job, but it's fun. And if you like it, then give it a shot.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things we'll do is we'll link your website and information in the show notes. So if people want to check out your company, they can go down there and click on that link, and it'll take you to your website, and of course have your email address there as well. So, all right, favorite Disney character. I have to ask that since I'm talking to a Disney expert. What's the favorite Disney character?
Classic Mickey Mouse.
Classic Mickey Mouse. Now,
Classic.
What is classic
now,
Mickey
the classic,
Mouse?
the old school Mickey Mouse with the red shorts, not the new age version. They keep modifying, with special costumes. No, just the classic Mickey Mouse, the one that I grew up with in the 80s. The classic Mickey.
Gotcha. All right, and then so if you had to choose a destination other than Disney, either that you've been to or one that is on, a bucket list type thing, your destination of choice besides outside of Disney?
Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Really?
Yes. My husband and I love it there, and it's just, he wants to relocate, especially during the month of August living here in Fairhope. Yeah. He shows me every day the high in Jackson Hole. It's just it's a small town, and you can make it the ski experience, but you can still do Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah,
so,
that's great. So as you look at the future of Magical Distractions Travel Company, where do you want to be in, let's just say, the next couple of years? What's your vision for the company as a whole? Do you want to continue to grow? Do you kind of like what you got going on now as far as the size? What do you want to do?
I do like the size. I've always said I would never have more than 50 agents. Okay. The thought of that sort of scares me because managing agents and processing commission payments and all the business end part of it is very time consuming, and it takes me away from doing what I love, which is helping families plan. Okay. So keeping the agency sort of small the way that we are right now, maybe in the next few years, 5 to 10 more agents, then I'm good. But, I'm never going to be one of those that you can go on Facebook and see that hiring travel agents now and there's 300 faces sitting there. No, that's not me. I like the personal connection with the people, the relationships that I've built. My accountant actually is a client. So, there's all these people that I've connected with that I wouldn't otherwise be able to build that relationship with if it was so big that I wasn't dealing with them and doing their travel. But from a Disney standpoint, being earmarked is sort of what Disney gives you. If you're an earmarked agency, that means that you've met a certain sales threshold with them, and they have different levels, and we were earmarked in January 1st on the silver level. Okay. So my goal right now is to get to the gold level, which is basically around $1 million in sales annually with them specifically.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's sort of.
Well, great. Yeah, lots of great things going on. Again, if people want to check out what you guys have going on, they can go to the show notes. We'll have the links there. Caroline, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.